want. We are going to set up the environment that we need in order to create Android applications. We are going to install few things. First of all, we are going to install Java Development Kit, or as some might call it, JDK. After that, we are going to install Android Studio, and after everything, we are going to create a virtual device in order to test our Android applications. As you can see, I have already downloaded JDK and Android Studio. Let's also see where we can get them from. For JDK, you can simply search for Java JDK, and a link from Oracle website should pop up. The first link from the Oracle webpage is probably our needed link. As you can see, we are going to download and install JDK version 8. It's going to be enough for our purposes in this course. Down in here, first of all, we need to agree to the license agreement. And after that, depending on your operating system, you can download one of these versions. I'm on Windows, so I'm going to download and install this Windows x64 version. If you are not sure about this x86 or x64, you can right click on my computer on your desktop in Properties. In here you can see the architecture of your CPU. Mine is 64-bit, for you it might be x86. Depending on that, select one of these two files. Just click on this download and the download should be started. Sometimes, like here, it might ask you to log into your Oracle account. Let's do that. Creating an Oracle account is free and you won't be charged. Okay, let's select sign in, and as you can see, the download has begun. I'm going to select cancel in here because I have downloaded the JDK previously. Let's select that. It's going to be a really simple installation process. Let's select next. Once again next. Once again let's click on next. And as you can see, we have successfully installed JDK. Let's click on this clause. If you want to make sure that you have installed Java JDK successfully, you can always go to your command prompt by going to start menu and typing cmd. In here you can type java-version. As you can see, we are seeing some information about the version of Java installed on our system. As long as it's 1.8 and higher, we are good to go. Let's close our command prompt. Next, we are going to download Android Studio. For that, we can go to developer.android.com. Let's see, developer.android.com. During the course, we will come back to this website a lot because this is the official website for Android developers. Okay, for downloading Android Studio, just go to this Android Studio tab, and from here you can download one of the versions. If you don't see your version of operating system, you can click on these download options, but in here I'm just going to click on the download. Let's say download Android Studio. We need to agree to the terms and conditions. And as you can see, the download has started. Once again, I'm going to select cancel in here because I have already downloaded Android Studio. After the download is finished, just click on that. Once again, this is going to be a simple installation process. Let's select next. In here, make sure to check this Android virtual device. Let's select next. In here, you need to select a path to install Android Studio. Notice that installing Android Studio and all of its SDKs and also emulators sometimes might take something like 20 or even 40 gigabytes. So make sure to have at least 20 gigabytes on the drive that you are going to install your Android Studio. After that, let's select next and install. After the installation is finished, just click on this next and let's start our Android Studio. Don't worry about these three projects that I have in here. Basically, these are the recent projects that I was working on. I have Android Studio installed on my system previously and I uninstalled it for this video, but for you this list should be empty. Also, along the way of installing Android Studio, you might see some windowses about selecting a theme or other preferences. I didn't see them because I have installed Android Studio previously on my system. Those are not important. Depending on your preferences, select one. Just if you see something like installing SDK, uncheck that because we are going to install it in here together. In order to install SDK, you can come to this configure in here and you can select this SDK manager. SDK stands for Software Development Kit, and for developing Android applications, you need to install at least one SDK. Once again, as you can see, I have installed two SDKs in here, Android 10 and Android 9 APIs. but for you this list should be empty and none of these should be checked. First of all, let's check this show package details in order to see the package details for every SDK. By the time I'm recording this video, the latest version of Android is Android 10 or API level 29 to be precise. I suggest that you always install the latest version. But sometimes there might be some preview versions in here. I don't suggest installing those because those can be buggy and those are not yet released on a stable channel. So make sure to install the latest stable version. If you want, you can install the complete SDK, but I don't suggest that because these can be memory and hard drive consuming and these can occupy a lot of storage on your device. But the necessary things in here is first of all Android SDK versions, whatever the version of your API is. So the first one, also the sources for that version of SDK, the second option. Also, I suggest that depending on the architecture of your system, select one of these two versions of Atom. Mine was 64 architecture, so I'm going to select this one. If you are going to work with different Google APIs, for example, if you are going to work with Google Map or YouTube APIs, check one of these. For example, this Google API is for Atom 64, and also check one of these two Google API versions. This is going to install at least one SDK on my system, the Android 10 or API level 29, but if you want, you can select and install multiple SDK versions. Basically, these SDK versions and APIs means that in what version of Android are you going to run and test your applications. Later on, we will see that when we are going to run our application on a virtual device, we are going to need at least one SDK. Installing multiple SDKs can be memory consuming and also hard drive consuming, but if you have the resources, I suggest that you at least install the latest version. After that, install this API level 29 because there were a lot of changes specifically in the data storage structure. Also install API level 28. Down in here, install API level 26, and after that level 21 and also 19, because in this version of SDKs there were a lot of changes, and I'm just saying this because of my experience in Android app development. But if you don't have the proper resources, selecting one of these is going to be just fine. After selecting what you need in here, just click on this apply. Make sure to have a stable internet connection because it's going to download some stuff. Let's click on this apply. In here you can see a dialog that will show you some information about the stuff that are going to be downloaded and also the size of the download file. Let's select OK in here and our download should be started. I'm going to skip the video in here until the download is finished. After the downloading and installing all of the components that you have selected before is finished, just click on this finish. And let's see what else do we have in here. Okay, we have successfully installed at least one SDK. Let's switch to this SDK tools and let's see what we need from here. First of all, once again check this show package details. Install one of these Android SDK build tools. I suggest that install the latest version. As you can see, mine is installed in here, 29.0.2 at the time is the latest version. Also down in here, you need to install Android emulator. Mine is not updated, so I'm going to update that. The next two things that are mandatory are these SDK platform tools and SDK tools. Make sure to select those two. Also down in here we have this documentation for Android SDK. This option is not necessary, but it's going to help us a lot during our journey in Android app development. Later on we will see that these documentations will help us a lot when we want to debug something or when we face some errors. So I strongly suggest to install these documentations as well. The other thing that is not necessary but I suggest to install is this Haxem installer. It is going to be an accelerator for the speed of your emulator. The native emulator in Android Studio can be very slow, especially if you have a low memory RAM. For that reason, I suggest you to install this Haxem installer. But there is one thing that I need to mention in here. I've seen a lot of students having problem with this Haxem installer. I've seen them that they cannot install this Haxem successfully. This Haxem cannot be installed on all of the CPUs, and depending on the structure of your CPU, this Haxem might not be installed. But there are some CPUs, especially Intel CPUs, that they have a special option in the device's BIOS, specifically for this emulator accelerator. If that's not enabled, you may want to enable that in the BIOS settings as well. And also, if for any reason you couldn't install this Haxem installer, this emulator accelerator, and also for that matter the Android emulator itself, there is no need to worry, there is another way as well. Beside the native Android emulator, you can install external emulators as well. For example, the one that I know that is working very well is called Genymotion. In here I'm not going to install that, but I will put a link to download Genymotion in the description of this video. And also, beside all of these, you can always install and test your applications on the real device that you have. Later on in the course, we will see that how we can install and test our applications on our mobile phones. Okay, after selecting everything from here, just click on apply once again. Once again, we are seeing the download information. Let's select OK and let the download begin. Once again, I'm going to skip the video in here until the download is finished. Once again, when the download and installing is finished, just click on this finish, and we have successfully installed SDK platforms and SDK tools. Just before I close this window, let's switch to this appearance in here. From here, you can change all of the preferences that you want. For example, you can change the theme. Dracula is the dark theme. Also, we have this high contrast theme. The IntelliJ theme is the light theme. I'm going to stay with that because it's good for recording purposes. If you want, you can use custom fonts for the fonts of your Windowses. From here, you can also change the size of your font. I'm not going to do that. Also, down in here, you can change the font size also for the presentation mode. If you want to change the size of your codes, you can search for font in here. I believe it's in this editor tab in here. In this font, you can see that mine is 18. You can increase or decrease that if you want. Okay, let's delete this one. And also let's minimize this editor. I have another suggestion for you in here as well. In this appearance, inside the system settings, inside the updates, make sure that your updates are being checked from a stable channel. We have other channels like developer channels and beta channels as well. Make sure that you have the stable channel. Others can be buggy. Okay, that's it for installing SDK. We will be coming back to this setting menu later on. Let's select OK. Okay, now it's time to install at least one emulator. For that, we can once again select this configure. This time we can click on this AVD manager. AVD stands for Android Virtual Device. As you can see, once again, I have two devices installed in here, Pixel 2 and Pixel 3. This list should be empty for you, but because I had Android Studio installed on my system, I can see them. Let's select this create virtual device in order to create a new virtual device. First of all, you can create your own and customized hardware by selecting this new hardware profile. From here, you can name your device. You can select that if it's a phone or tablet. You can set the screen size and resolution. Also down in here, you can specify some RAM to it and all sorts of sensors and hardwares. I'm not going to create my customized device. Instead, I'm going to install one of the predefined devices. As you can see, I have Pixel 2 and Pixel 3 in here. Let's select another device from here. Also from this left panel, you can see all sorts of devices like TV, Wear OS, and tablets. Let's select one device from here. I don't even know all of these devices. Let's just select this Pixel XL. Select next. Okay, from here you need to specify the Android version that is going to be installed on this device. I'm going to install Android Q or API level 29 on this device. So we need to download that first. Let's select download once again. I think it's going to be a large file, so I'm going to skip the download in here until the download is finished. Yes, it's 1.1 gigabyte. Okay, the download and installing is finished. Just click on finish. Now we can select the downloaded API. Sometimes you might not see the version of API that you are looking for. For that, first of all, you can always refresh this list. After that, you can check the second tab and also the third tab. But we are going to install Android Q on our device. Let's select next. In here we can customize our device. For example, we can change the name of our device. We can also change the default orientation, for example the landscape and portrait. I'm going to stay with portrait. In this show advanced settings, we can do some more customization. For example, you can change the camera, the network. Also down in here, you can change the size of RAM and SD card and all sort of customization. I'm not going to change any of this. I'm just going to click on this finish. And as simple as that, we have installed a new emulator on our device. Okay, let's close this window. Okay, I think it's a good point to finish off this video. In this video, we have installed JDK, we have installed Android Studio. After that, we have installed SDK and we have done some customization on the appearance. And after everything, we have installed a